Good day. It's a pleasure to have you here on another episode of News Express. Nigeria's opposition politics has entered another tense and emotional phase after former Vice President Atiku Abubakar officially emerged as the presidential candidate of the ADC. Following a dramatic primary election that immediately triggered controversy, accusations, and internal resistance from rival aspirants. What was expected to become a defining moment of opposition unity ahead of the 2027 presidential election instead exposed fresh cracks inside one of the country's fastest-growing political coalitions. While Atiku celebrated victory and appealed for peace and unity inside the party, former Minister of Transportation Amaechi and economist Hayatu-Deen openly rejected the process, raising serious questions about transparency, voter disenfranchisement, and the future stability of the ADC ahead of the national elections. The development has now intensified fears that opposition parties may once again weaken themselves through internal conflicts at the exact moment many Nigerians are demanding a united front against the ruling APC. The official declaration took place at the Congress Hall of the Transcorp Hilltop in Abuja, where party leaders, led by former Senate President David Mark, presented the ADC flag to Atiku after the final results were announced. According to the figures released by the party, Atiku secured a massive 1,846,370 votes, defeating Amaechi, who pulled 504,117 votes, and Hayatu-Deen, who received 177,120 votes. The margin was overwhelming and politically symbolic because it demonstrated Atiku's continued influence across major political structures nationwide, despite years of intense political competition and repeated presidential contests. Atiku defeated Amaechi by more than 1.3 million votes and established dominance across most of the federation during the direct primary exercise conducted simultaneously across all 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory. But instead of ending with celebration and unity, the atmosphere inside the opposition coalition quickly became politically explosive after both Amaechi and Hayatu-Deen publicly rejected the outcome. Amaechi described the result as concocted and accused the party of widespread voter disenfranchisement and irregularities during the process. Hayatu-Deen also boycotted the declaration ceremony in Abuja after alleging manipulation and flaws during voting nationwide. Suddenly, the same ADC that has spent months attacking APC and INEC over alleged electoral malpractice found itself facing similar accusations from its own presidential aspirants. Nigerians watching the drama unfold immediately began asking difficult questions about whether opposition parties truly possess the democratic discipline they constantly demand from the ruling party. That contradiction has become one of the biggest political problems emerging from the ADC primary crisis because the party had carefully positioned itself as a cleaner and more transparent democratic alternative ahead of 2027. ADC leaders repeatedly criticized the ruling political establishment for alleged manipulation, inflated political figures, weak democratic culture, and questionable electoral processes. That party attempted presenting itself as a credible coalition built on transparency and internal democracy. However, the moment two major aspirants rejected the outcome publicly, the image of unity and credibility the party had worked hard to build suddenly came under serious pressure. Critics immediately argued that opposition parties cannot claim moral superiority while facing allegations of the same practices they accuse others of encouraging nationally. Despite the growing tension, Atiku moved quickly to calm the situation and project the image of reconciliation and maturity. Speaking after receiving the party flag, the former vice president appealed directly to all aggrieved members and aspirants to close ranks and unite behind the ADC ahead of the 2027 presidential election. He specifically invited Amaechi and Mohammed Hayatu-Deen to join him in what he described as a national struggle to rescue Nigeria from worsening insecurity, economic hardship, democratic decline, unemployment, poverty, and political instability. Atiku insisted that the primary should not produce bitterness because, according to him, there were no winners and losers inside the party. Instead, he framed the contest as the beginning of a broader national movement aimed at confronting the challenges facing ordinary Nigerians daily. His message was carefully calculated to reassure both party members and the wider Nigerian public that ADC remains focused on the bigger political battle ahead. Atiku understands clearly that the opposition cannot afford serious internal division at this stage, especially while ruling APC continues consolidating influence nationally. He also understands that millions of Nigerians frustrated by rising hardship, food inflation, kidnappings, insecurity, unemployment, and economic suffering are watching the opposition closely for signs of discipline, seriousness, and maturity. Many citizens desperately want a credible alternative capable of challenging the current political establishment effectively in 2027. This means opposition parties are under enormous pressure, not only to criticize APC, but also to demonstrate that they can manage their own affairs transparently and peacefully. The broader political atmosphere across Nigeria makes the ADC crisis even more significant because opposition parties generally remain fragmented and unstable. PDP continues battling leadership disputes and internal divisions. Labour Party remains weakened by factional disagreements and defections. SDP also struggles with competing camps and parallel structures. Against these backgrounds, ADC has slowly emerged as one of the few platforms capable of attracting nationally recognized political heavyweights into one coalition. The entry of figures like Atiku, Amaechi, and Hayatu-Deen gave the party new relevance nationally and increased expectations that it could eventually become a major force against APC ahead of 2027 election. That is why the controversy surrounding the primary immediately created anxiety among opposition supporters nationwide. Amaechi's reaction carried particular political weight because of his national profile and long-standing reputation as a strong opposition figure. The former Rivers governor argued that any party criticizing APC and INEC for manipulation cannot engage in similar practices internally without losing credibility completely. His comments struck directly at the moral image ADC had attempted building publicly. For many Nigerians, the controversy exposed one of the biggest recurring weaknesses inside opposition politics itself. Opposition parties often unite around criticism of the ruling government, but struggle maintaining internal unity once ambition, competition, and presidential interests collide. This pattern has weakened several coalitions historically and many observers fear ADC could eventually face similar internal fractures if reconciliation efforts fail. Hayatu-Deen's boycott of the final declaration ceremony further deepened concerns about the party's internal stability because it suggested dissatisfaction extended beyond one candidate alone. Although Hayatu-Deen lacks the national political machinery associated with Atiku or Amaechi, his protest reinforced the perception that the process itself remains disputed by multiple camps inside the coalition. Political analysts warn that unresolved bitterness after primaries often creates long-term damage, capable of weakening parties before general elections even begin properly. Rival camps may refuse cooperation, reduce campaign enthusiasm, undermine leadership internally, or quietly support alternative interests behind the scenes. These risks explain why Atiku repeatedly emphasized unity throughout his victory speech. During his address, Atiku also focused heavily on national issues affecting ordinary Nigerians daily. He criticized worsening insecurity, poverty, unemployment, healthcare failures, and economic hardship across the country. He promised free compulsory basic education, stronger healthcare system, improved security coordination, and economic reforms aimed at reducing suffering if elected president in 2027. He accused the ruling APC of suppressing democracy and intimidating opposition figures nationwide, while insisting ADC represented one of the few surviving democratic platforms capable of rescuing Nigeria politically and economically. His speech targeted frustrated Nigerians increasingly angry over rising living costs, kidnappings, inflation, insecurity, and governance failures spreading across the country. Still, beneath the speeches and public optimism lies a much bigger political reality confronting the opposition. Nigerian opposition coalition have historically struggled under the pressure of ambition, mistrust, ego, regional rivalry, and internal competition. Alliance rise dramatically and collapse suddenly. Coalition promise unity, but fracture under leadership disputes. Political interests often overpower collective strategy before election even arrive. This is why what happens next inside ADC matters enormously. If the party successfully reconciles rival camps and maintains internal cohesion, it could emerge as one of the strongest opposition forces heading towards 2027. But if bitterness and accusations continue escalating publicly, ADC risks weakening itself badly at the exact moment millions of Nigerians are searching for a serious political alternative. Perhaps that is the biggest lesson from the dramatic events surrounding this primary. Winning a presidential ticket is one challenge. Holding together an ambitious opposition coalition under intense political pressure is an entirely different battle altogether. That's all for now on News Express, and if you find this insightful, kindly like, subscribe, and share this video. I'm Chidera Esom. Thank you for watching. Do have a beautiful day.